recording the meeting. I now take the sediment for this meeting of the Planning Committee held on 12 March 2024. The following members are present: Councillors Alec Allison, Ralph Barker, Arch Buchanan, Ross Clark, Jerry Convery, Margaret Cowie, Maureen Devlin, Colin Dewar, Mary Donnelly. With apologies from Councillor Joe Fagan. Councillors Elise Frame and Alistair Fulton are present. With apologies from Councillor Shalene Handybod. Councillor Walter Brogan is attending as a substitute. Councillors Graham Horn, Ross Lambie are present. Councillor Martin Lennon is not present. With apologies from Councillor Monique McAdams. Following members are present: Councillors Leslie MacDonald, David McLachlan, Richard Nelson, Norman Ray, John Ross, Graham Scott, David Shearer. With apologies from Councillor Helen Toner, and Councillor David Watson is also present. Thank you, and I will now pass you back to the Chair for today's business.
Thank you, Stuart. Just before commencing today's business, members, I would ask to note that item 4 for a residential development at Loningdale School in Biggar has been withdrawn at the request of the applicant and can be removed from today's papers. Agenda item number 1 is any declarations of interest. Item number 2, minutes of the previous meeting submitted for approval as a correct record. These are pages 5 to 8 in your pack. I will move that as a correct record.
I'll second it.
All agreed. Thank you. Agenda item number 3 is application EK 180023 and EK 180024. It's pages 9 to 16 in your pack. And it's erection of 35 dwelling houses with associated infrastructure and landscaping, and erection of 14 dwelling houses with associated landscape and infrastructure at land 110 northwest of Little Park Cottage in East Kilbride. Fraser?
Thanks, Chair. This report refers to 2 planning applications which fall under the description of legacy applications. The proposals covered by both applications were initially submitted by Cala Homes, but following confirmation that they were no longer party to the contract for the land, the application was taken up by CSK Land Limited. Subsequent to this, the site was subject to planning applications by Stuart Milne Homes and has since been developed. And while the plan that accompanies this report is not necessarily up to date, I can confirm that the entire area has been built out. The applicants have been asked to withdraw the applications on more than one occasion, but have not done so. Therefore, there has been a requirement to bring the applications to committee for a decision, and on the grounds that the layout and footprint for these applications does not match the development that has been constructed on site, it is considered that for the reasons set out in section 11 of the report presented to members that these applications should be refused.
Thank you, Fraser. I'll open up for any questions or comments, please. If there are no questions or comments, I will then move the recommendation to refuse.
I'll second it, Chair.
All agreed? Thank you. Agenda item number 5 is application P221466. My Deputy Chair has put me off there, sorry. Right. Residential development with associated parking, landscape and open space and drainage, land adjacent to Stewart Avenue in Hamilton. Fraser?
Yes, Chair. This application relates to a small site that forms part of the Hamilton Community Growth Area, and permission is sought in principle for the erection of 12 dwellings. The application received no representation, and there were no objections or adverse comments from consultees. As the site lies within the community growth area, the principle of residential development is acceptable, and there are no other factors that are relevant to the proposal that would mitigate against the recommendation of approval. It is noted, though, that the wider area is subject to a requirement to enter into a Section 75 agreement, and this will be requiring an appropriate financial payment to be made within the context of this proposal. As such, subject to the conditions set out in Section 11 of the report, it is recommended that consent should be granted following the conclusion of the Section 75 agreement.
Thank you, Fraser. I'll open up for any questions or comments. Councillor Mary Donnelly.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to welcome this paper. Small though it may be, it is very much welcomed by the community and the housing that's going to be built thereafter. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Donnelly. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Donnelly again. If there's no further questions or comments, I will then recommend to grant subject to conditions and the legal agreement.
I'll second that, Chair.
All agreed? Thank you. Agenda item number 6 is application P230485. It's pages 41 to 56 in your pack. It's extraction of sand and gravel with restoration to form balancing pond wetland, agriculture and grassland, and it's Rye Flat Quarry, West End, Carnwath.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, this application relates to an existing quarry facility and seeks to amend one of the conditions that were attached to the original consent to allow operations to begin at 7 AM as opposed to 8. One letter of representation has been submitted in relation to the restoration plan for the site, but given that this application only seeks to amend operating hours, and this in itself does not raise any unacceptable planning issues, it is considered that subject to the imposition of the remaining conditions from the original consent and the revision of the Section 75 agreement, that this application to amend operating hours should be approved.
Thank you, Fraser. I'll open up for any questions or comments. If there are no questions or comments, I will then recommend it to grant subject to conditions and the modification of the existing Section 75 agreement.
I'll second it, Chair.
All agreed? Thank you. Agenda item number 7 is application P230851, pages 57 to 72 in your pack. It's the erection of a restaurant and drive-through, hot food takeaway, associated car parking, access, external seating area, play structure, landscaping and associated structure works at 1 Lindsayfield Road, East Kilbride.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, this application relates to a site within the Lindsayfield Commercial Centre and seeks planning consent for a restaurant, drive-through and hot food takeaway with associated facilities. No objections have been made by statutory consultees, and following positive input from colleagues within the road service, amendments have been made by the applicants to the originally submitted scheme that have led to the assessment that the proposal can be accommodated on the local road network. 531 letters have been submitted in relation to the application by members of the public, with 356 objections and 172 letters of support and 3 comments, and a summary of the representations that are available to view on the Council's planning portal are summarised in section 7 of the report. In assessing the application within the context of the representations received and the relevant development plan policies in the National Planning Framework and the South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan, it is considered that this proposal is acceptable, with a key consideration being that it relates to a commercial development that is proposed for an area zoned for that purpose. There are no material considerations or technical considerations that would mitigate against the proposal being acceptable on land use planning terms, and this is summarised in section 10 of the report that is presented to members. Therefore, in conclusion, it is recommended that, subject to the conditions set out on pages 68, 69 and 70 of the papers, that consent should be granted to application P230851.
Thank you, Fraser. I'll open up for any questions or comments. Councillor David Watson.
Thanks, Chair. This has been quite a controversial application, history of it. I'm looking for some assurances regarding traffic management. There's 2 McDonald's restaurants in East Kilbride at the moment, and at times it's chaotic, both on the Queensway and on the heading towards Kingsgate, with traffic backing up. Given this location is within a bordering a residential area, although the description here is it's a commercial centre, it's in a car park for a supermarket, which obviously would deem at one point needed the amount of car parking spaces that were there. These are now been removed. The report also suggests that there's the residential areas up a banking that borders it, but there's also a residential area in the flat, probably, if I get my geography right, to the west, at the other side of the petrol station at Morrison's. There's a care home and residential areas, and if traffic starts backing up the way it does at other facilities, McDonald's facilities in East Kilbride. It's going to be chaos getting onto the roads round about, the one road leading into Lindsayfield, although the spine road's now been opened down to Jackton. So I know Roads haven't got any objections to it. I'm assuming Roads didn't have any objections at the time that we looked at the ones in the Queensway and at towards Kingsgate, and we've experienced traffic problems there. What assurances can you give local residents that they won't suffer traffic issues with this restaurant if it's given planning permission today? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Okay, you want I'll bring Fraser and then the next one.
Yeah, no, thanks, Councillor Watson. I think the issue around this is we recognise these are popular facilities once they are established, and I think that's why we do try to guide development towards existing commercial areas and where there are other uses of a similar nature. The impact on the residential areas was taken into consideration, but there was quite a significant engagement with the applicants on the road service in order to get to the proposal that we have now. The opening in the link road will make a difference, and that's been recognised in terms of the traffic assessment, the traffic management plan that's been submitted. It is a use that you would anticipate to find within an area like this. We recognise in terms of some of the challenges that are faced with the other existing uses there, but to some extent I suppose it's a proposal needs to be assessed on its own merits, and the submission that we have received here was acceptable on planning grounds as well as to our colleagues in terms of their input through the roads assessment. So I think we're comfortable that there are conditions here and we continue to manage the traffic management plan as well, and that the developer will engage with herself, and if there are any changes that need to be made in terms of any road layouts or any issues that emerge, we will continue to work with the operator moving forward.
Councillor Watson, you?
Thanks for that. But what recourse is there if applications granted and that we experience the experience that we're getting elsewhere? Because it is taking a substantial amount of car park away from Morrison's, and also then the potential for the tailback for Morrison's, for the car park, for the petrol station at Morrison's, and getting onto the Lindsayfield Road. So is there any recourse if we do experience similar problems to elsewhere?
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, we're aware of some issues at some of the other McDonald's, and we don't want to make the same or end up with the same situation. A transport assessment was carried out, and we really reviewed this carefully to make sure that we were confident about the proposals and how they would operate. First of all, in terms of the car park, there were some surveys done of the car park to establish that there is adequate capacity within the car park. And just to give some comfort, with the inclusion of McDonald's, there would still be up to 160 parking spaces available, even with the current parking within Morrison's. So the parking will be reduced from 500 down to 379, but at the busiest period when it was surveyed, there was only 219 cars counted in the car park. So it's fair to say that the car park has got the capacity in it. In terms of the actual layout, again, we were involved in earlier discussions around the layout, and what was amended was to make sure that the entrance to McDonald's had a separate lane. So there is a separate lane to McDonald's, and that can accommodate up to 29 vehicles. So Morrison's would still be able to operate even if there was a queue of 29 vehicles. 29 vehicle was the maximum queue that was observed at the McDonald's and the Queensway, just to give some comfort. And that's located on a main A-class road,
So whilst we anticipate the McDonald's will be successful in Lindsayfield, the one at the Queensway is a particularly busy McDonald's. I think it's also thought that some of the issues that are on the Queensway, some of the people that go to McDonald's will choose to use Lindsayfield rather than the Queensway, so it may help to ease the situation there. I think it's probably the detail I've got around that.
Thank you, Fraser. Councillor Graham Scott.
Thank you, Chair. Can I say I'm in general support of this application. Obviously, there's a couple of wee changes I'd like to put to committee. To go back, had we been doing this 2 or 3 years ago, it's the Spine Road now opening has changed that whole game completely. I mean, had we been sitting here 3 years ago without that Spine Road being open, I think it would have been a different game altogether. And I take Mr Carlin's point that whether we like it or not, McDonald's is very popular once it opens. That's just beyond any argument or any doubt. The point I'd like to make is, and again, the report makes reference to houses being between 60 and 100 metres. I think David's alluded to it as well, David Watson, 60 to 100 metres away. And if I can point people to, there's no page numbers, but the conditions. I'd like to talk about condition 2 and condition 3. Condition 2, that all deliveries shall be restricted to between the hours of 07 hours in the morning and 23 hours at night. My amendment would be, and hopefully it can get an agreement, I mean, I'll move a formal amendment if necessary, that we reduce that to 22 hours, 10 o'clock. The idea of major delivery vehicles at 11 o'clock at night for people, houses 60 to 100 metres away, I think is slightly odd. And subsequently, number 3, which is that the proposed opening hours shall be restricted to between the hours of 06 in the morning and midnight. I'm led to believe that Morrison's shut at 11 at night and all the other takeaways shut at 11 at night in the Lindsayfield Commercial Centre. So I think it would be symmetry with an ace if that got reduced to 11 o'clock. And if that can be agreed by everybody, fine, but I'll move a formal amendment if necessary, Chair. I'll leave it to you.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. I'll come back to you on that. I'll take Councillor Elise Frame. If there's any else looking to come in, can you please indicate now? Councillor Frame.
I totally agree with Councillor Scott. As somebody who previously has worked at McDonald's, the deliveries when they come are very loud. They come in large cages and they're full of all the stuff that has to be delivered. So getting a delivery at 11 o'clock at night in a residential area is not appropriate. And also I agree with, why is it going to be open to 12 o'clock when everywhere else shuts at 11? The issue we were saying is that should be a third McDonald's in East Kilbride. The other ones are opened later, so this one should be shut earlier. And that would take away from the residential area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Frame. We are willing to take those recommendations and add them into the conditions from Councillor Scott. Is there anybody otherwise minded to that? Okay, we will update the conditions that all deliveries shall be restricted between the hours of 7 and 10, and the proposed opening hours shall be restricted to between the hours of 6 in the morning and 11 o'clock in the evening. Yes. All agreed? Agreed. Okay, therefore I will recommend that we grant subject to the conditions with the update that Councillor Scott has
I'll second
proposed.
that, Chair.
Thank you. All agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you.
There we go.
Agenda item number 8, application P230992, pages 73 to 84. It's erection of portable frame structure to use as a car workshop with small office at Caldwell Side Industrial Estate in Lanark.
Thanks, Chair. This application, it seeks planning permission in principle for a 4-bay MOT car repair workshop in an existing industrial area on the outskirts of Lanark. Consent is sought to allow for the relocation of the business, and within the context of the relevant development plan policies, the principle of the proposed development is acceptable. 19 letters of support and 10 letters of objection were received in relation to the application, and a summary of the issues are set out in section 7 of the report. However, in assessing the proposals, it is considered that no issues have been raised that would mitigate against this scheme being approved, and therefore subject to the conditions set out in section 11 of the report, and for the reasons outlined in section 12, it is recommended that planning consent should be granted.
Thank you, Fraser. I open up for any questions or comments. If there are no questions or comments, I will then move the recommendation to grant subject to conditions.
I'll second it, Chair.
Thank you. All agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Agenda item number 9, application P231214, pages 85 to 94. It's the installation of a battery energy storage facility with associated infrastructure, land south east of Seath Road in Rutherglen.
Thanks, Chair. This application relates to a site within the Clyde Gateway Strategic Economic and Investment Location that is also covered in the Clyde Mission designation as defined in the National Development Framework. And it seeks consent for the construction of a battery energy storage facility to be erected on the site for a period of 40 years. The proposed development involves the siting of 20 battery storage containers and ancillary infrastructure with a capacity of some 50 megawatts. The application site is currently vacant but is surrounded by a number of industrial and commercial businesses, and the application itself has been augmented with a number of ancillary reports and documents that are available to view on the Council's planning portal and have been taken into consideration in the assessment of this application. With regard to the assessment, the relevant development plan policies is noted that policies 1 and 2 of the National Planning Framework seek to encourage uses that address the impact of climate change, and at the same time, Policy 18 of the South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan provides the local policy context, and again it is noted that the policy is favourable for renewable energy proposals. However, national and local planning policy does not set a hierarchy of policies, but instead it is recognised that the assessment of planning applications need to be made on the development plan as a whole, and in this context, the determining factor in this application relates to the fact that it seeks to introduce a use within a nationally important industrial and commercial area that does not create or secure Class 4, 5 or 6 employment opportunities. It does not involve the creation of a strategic office development, nor does it represent a use identified in the city region or the Council's economic strategy. As such, it is considered that the proposals are unacceptable on a number of development plan considerations, and these are set out in the details across section 10 of the report presented to members today. The applicant's agent has in recent days submitted new information to the Planning Service as well as to elected members in support of the application, but in this respect it is considered that no new issues or new considerations have been raised that would lead me to change the recommendation presented to members. In summary, it is recognised that battery storage systems are an emerging technology and a land use that will have an ongoing role in the drive to ensure that there is a reliable and steady supply of electricity into the national grid. However, it is noted that this is a land use that will need to be catered for in future iterations of the development plan and for which additional national guidance would be welcomed. In this instance, though, given that the site is surrounded by a number of existing employers and is within one of the prime industrial and commercial employment locations in South Lanarkshire, it is considered that this land use designation needs to be protected, and for the reasons set out on page 92 of the report to members, it is recommended that application P231214 should be refused.
Thank you, Fraser. I'll open up for any questions or comments. Councillor David Shearer.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not objecting to the conclusion of this report. I would only like to ask, I'm assuming, Fraser, that yourself and members in the department would be able to sit down with the applicant and find a more appropriate site for this application to go ahead that everybody could get behind. Is that correct?
That is correct, but I'll bring Fraser in just to back that up.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, no, that is correct. But actually, there are a number of proposals that the current applicant and the agent is involved with, as well as other proposals across South Lanarkshire. We're looking to identify the appropriate locations for this type of facility. So we're and because we recognise that it is part of our drive towards reducing energy consumption around it, but it's we don't feel that this is an appropriate location.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? If there are no further questions or comments, I will recommend refusal.
I'll second that, Chair.
All agreed? Thank you. Agenda item number 10 is application P231409 is pages 95 to 102, and it's a change of use of office space to form 6 flatted dwellings, 29 St James Avenue, East Kilbride.
Thanks, Chair. This application relates to a building within an established neighbourhood centre and seeks to create 6 residential units in the upper storey of the building, which is currently designated as office space. No public objections have been received against the proposals, but the Council's Environmental Service and Road Services have expressed concerns about the proposal and the impact that existing activities and businesses could have on the residents of these flats should planning consent be granted. In this context, while national and local development planning policy supports residential development on appropriate locations and encourages town centre living, in this instance it is considered that the amenity of the dwellings for future residents would not be to an acceptable standard. Local and national policy seeks to promote good design as a means of creating successful places and quality homes, but it is considered that this isn't achieved in this proposal. In particular, it is noted that 5 of the 6 properties would have no windows in the bedrooms, but instead would be lit by roof lanterns. In addition, the residential units would sit above existing uses, which raise concerns about noise and ventilation that could in turn impact on the amenity of residents or the viability of the businesses. The road services have also stated that there is insufficient parking for the proposed flats and objected to the proposals. In conclusion, while planning policy strongly supports town centre living, in this instance it is not considered an acceptable level of amenity could be secured for future residents, and therefore, for the reasons set out on page 100 of the report in front of members, it is recommended that this application should be refused.
Thank you, Fraser. I'll open up for any questions or comments, please. If there are no questions or comments, I will then recommend refusal.
I'll second that, Chair.
All agreed? Thank you. Agenda item number 11 is application P231532, pages 103 to 118 in your pack, and it's at Broken Cross Wind Farm for the erection of 10 wind turbines.
Yes, Chair, this application again seeks to vary conditions attached to a previous consent granted for this wind farm that is currently under construction on a site to the north of Junction 11 of the M74. In summary, the consent seeks to extend the operational lifetime of the wind farm from 25 to 30 years, as well as to amend the layout approved under an application granted in 2021. No objections have been received, and the assessment of the proposals did not identify any issues that would bring the proposals into conflict with relevant national or local planning policies. If the committee is minded to approve the application, it is noted that a legal agreement will need to be concluded in relation to community contributions and off-site works, but notwithstanding this process, it is considered that the variation of conditions as set out in section 3 are acceptable and subject to the continued implementation of the conditions on pages 110 to 116, as well as the conclusion of a legal agreement that consent should be granted.
Thank you, Fraser. I will open up for any questions or comments, please. If there are no questions or comments, I will then recommend to grant subject to conditions and the modification of the existing Section 75 agreement.
I'll second it, Chair.
All agreed? Agreed, thank you. Agenda item number 12, P231543, pages 119 to 126 in your pack. It's a demolition and rebuild of 2-storey dwelling house at 9 Sunningdale Wynd in Bothwell.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, this application relates to a residential area originally constructed as self-build plots accessed by a 2.5 metre wide public road in Bothwell. The applicants had initially submitted a proposal to extend the property. However, this was revised when it was recognised that demolition and rebuild was more cost effective, and neighbour notification was carried out again to allow for further comments. In this respect, 29 separate letters of objection have been received, and these are all on the Council's webpage and have been summarised in section 7 of the report that is presented to members, and relate to issues around the impact of construction, loss of light and privacy for neighbouring properties, and suggesting that the proposal is out of keeping with the surrounding area. In assessing the proposals against the relevant national and local planning policies, it is considered that the development is acceptable and there are no overriding considerations that would lead to a recommendation for refusal. The applicants have amended the design of a proposal that was refused under delegated powers, but in doing so have addressed the concerns raised about the potential impact on the neighbouring properties and the surrounding area. Furthermore, construction or disruption caused by construction traffic would only be for a temporary period, but the applicants have advised that they will seek to minimise disruption, albeit that this is out with the control of the planning process. Therefore, in conclusion, it is considered that application P231543 should be approved.
Thank you, Fraser. I'll open up for any questions or comments. Councillor Maureen Devlin, please.
Thanks, Chair. I'm actually going to ask for this to be deferred. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the area at all. It's a single-track road. I'm well aware it's a housing development. There's no pavements. There's actually nowhere for anybody, for any construction or anything, especially for something to be demolished and then rebuilt. So I'm asking it for it to be deferred under public safety, even till such times as we get a site visit and somebody can explain clearly to me how this can be done in a safe manner. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Devlin. Are you moving for a site visit? For the committee for a site visit, sorry.
I'm moving to defer it for a site visit for public safety. Yes, Chair. Thanks.
Okay. Do you have a seconder for... Okay. Are you willing to accept that for the Plan Department to come back with further information about the road rather than a site visit? Because I'm not keen on having a site visit, to be honest, to the area. But I would rather that the roads came back with further information to us. I genuinely don't think we need a site visit for the full committee to get bussed up to Boswell.
Yes, I'm quite happy with that, but if it would be possible for even myself, for roads to explain or planners to explain how it's going to be possible for this construction to go ahead. I don't know if I'm allowed to do that, to remain on the committee. Thanks.
Thank you. I think obviously that's a test for yourself as a committee member, and under your code of conduct it would be for you to make that decision, and then whether you could actually take part in the next part of the process. You could certainly speak at it, but whether you'd be allowed to take that vote, that would be the test for you to undertake. In regards to that, within your right as a local ward member to seek advice and as you want, and that would be the test for you. Is the seconder happy to accept that for that recommendation? Okay, thank you. I'll come back to you. Councillor Mary Donnelly, please.
It's okay. Maureen's cleared that I was going to support her proposal.
Thank you. Councillor John Ross.
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. I was just hoping that we could maybe hear from Rose just now. I see in the report they seem to think that there's no problem involved here, that it could be accommodated. And I was just wondering if we can hear from them just now, see if they can clarify the situation. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. As a recommendation that from Councillor Devlin, seconded by Councillor MacDonald, that we bring back more information from roads. So rather than enter into dialogue at this stage, I would go with the proposal that we get this information back for the next meeting, or when the next available meeting could be, and get that discussed then, if that's okay, Councillor Ross.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Any other further comments? No further comments. I will then move to defer this under recommendation from Councillor Devlin and Councillor MacDonald.
I'll second it, Chair.
Okay, recommended for deferment for further information. Thank you. Agenda item number 13 is P231586. It's a change of use of former betting shop to hot food takeaway with associated flue. It's 100 Union Street in Larkhall. Fraser?
Yeah, Chair, this application relates to a site located within the town centre of Larkhall that is currently vacant but was previously a bookmaker's. Consent is sought for a hot food takeaway, with the layout submitted indicating it would be an oven-fired pizzeria with an area of seating. 6 objections were submitted to this application on the grounds that there are too many takeaways in the town centre and the lack of parking. In this respect, however, it is noted that the site is in a designated town centre that has a mix of commercial, retail and hot food uses, and as such, bringing a use into this currently vacant property should not compromise the vitality of the town centre. In addition, the applicant has committed to the installation of a suitable ventilation system and there is sufficient on-street parking within the surrounding area. Therefore, subject to the conditions set out on pages 131 and 132, it is recommended that the change of use to create a hot food takeaway at 100 Union Street, Larkhall, should be approved.
Thank you. Councillor Ross Clark.
Thank you, Chair. More of a comment. I would like to welcome that a vacant building is now being used, and I wish them every success. I would note the importance of the objections and the representations made. I fully understand plans, explanations of them, and that the change of use won't bring up any material considerations that would warrant refusal. You know, I would also specifically like to highlight the too many takeaways within Larkhall. I think that's an important point to raise and something to be mindful of. I do welcome that it's a slightly different type of hot food takeaway, and that it doesn't raise any planning considerations that would warrant refusal, as I said. So that's all I would want to comment.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? No further questions or comments. As a local member, I think Larkhall Main Street is a very well used main street. I'm happy to see that other places are starting to use buildings rather than lying empty and derelict, and it's certainly not for the planning committee to decide if there's too many takeaways. That's more a licensing issue than it is a planning issue. Certainly, we would like to see less takeaways, but again, I would rather shops were used than lying absolutely empty and running with water and falling into disrepair. Therefore, I will recommend to grant subject to conditions.
I'll second that, Chair.
All agreed? Agreed, thank you. Agenda item number 14. I have no items of urgent business. I will ask the clerk to stop the recording and wish you all a good day. Thank you.